Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for attending CVRP's dealership webinar, Increase Your CSI Score with EV Customers, How to Become an EV Charging Expert. As others start to log on, it would be great to hear your feedback on our first polling question when you get a chance. So the question is, what is the top charging question you are asked about? EV range per model, how to charge, where to charge, cost of electric versus gas. I'll give you a couple of minutes to take a look and provide your input. Also, as you mark your answers, I want to reiterate that this webinar is full of useful information that will help guide your answers to any EV customers' charging questions. So let's see those results. Great. Thanks to everyone for providing us your feedback, and it seems that EV range per model and where to charge are some top questions for EV customers regarding charging. As we move through this webinar, we will guide you all further in how to become an EV charging expert and offer some great tools, some tips, some tricks to apply your charging knowledge to the steps of a sale. Okay, let's get started. Before we begin, since this webinar is live and we are working from home, at times we experience technical difficulties, mostly audio, the occasional frozen screen, and delay in slide transition. So thank you for your patience. Welcome everyone to the fourth webinar in the dealership webinar series. We are glad to have the opportunity to provide so many California dealerships the most current and update information on EVs and incentives, as CVRP continues to be your go-to EV resource. So thank you for always giving us time to support you and your EV sales. I'm Matthew Henderson, Senior Outreach Coordinator for Center for Sustainable Energy, and the territories I cover for CVRP Dealer Outreach are West LA and Central Coast. I want to inform you all about the Center for Sustainable Energy. CSE is a nonprofit energy program administration and advisory service organization. Our vision is a future with sustainable, equitable, resilient transportation, buildings, and communities. Our single mission is to decarbonize. So if you would like to learn more about CSC and CVRP after this webinar, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you. Our agenda is packed with a lot of great information on how to increase your CSI score and step to become an EV charging expert. This webinar really was developed to set you all up as the experts and for your customers to drive off that lot knowing more about EVs than when they drove into the lot. We want you to make them feel like they won $1 million when acquiring their EV from you. So the effort you put forward to educating yourself about EVs will pay off, and you will be able to further impress your customers with EV knowledge gained today, I think reflecting highly on your CSI score for tomorrow. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please write them in the question box and we will answer them near the completion of the webinar. So let's take a quick poll real quick. Where's everybody coming from today? LA, Inland Empire, Sacramento, Central Valley, San Diego, Bay, North area, California. While you're answering, I want to highlight there are over 1,300 CVRP new car dealerships in California with 6 dealership outreach coordinators, which provide dealerships up-to-date EV resources and information. So if you have talked with CJ, Brittany, Bridget, Tanner, Coley, or myself, we cannot wait to get back out to your location and talk EVs in person. So let's see those results. Great, looks like quite a bit of people are from San Diego, LA, and Bay Area. Looks like everyone's coming kind of from everywhere. So it's really great that you all are providing us a great audience. So thank you very much for your participation and attendance. So let's talk a little bit more about experts. When customers visit your dealership, you are their go-to expert and resource to help answer EV questions. Yes, they can read online about EVs and charging, but when they are ready to buy or lease an EV, and maybe it's their first, they look to dealership sales staff as the EV experts, every single one of you. There's a preference for online, on the lot, one-on-one conversation with EV experts. It's part of the experience, and yes, ordering an EV online is convenient, but EV customers won't want to connect. They want to meet you and for you to explain everything about EVs because you are their experts and they trust you. So let's talk EV policy. Cool, fast cars with lots of torque, sleek design, range for days are making EVs not a thing of the past, but a thing of the present. But as we all know, design is not the only driver of EV adoption. There has been a lot of legislation recently driving EV adoption statewide, and it's because EVs are cleaner. It's because EVs help reduce carbon emissions, and it's because EVs improve the air we breathe. Look, California is one of the largest dev markets and leads the nation in EV adoption. The state is on track for meeting many of its clean transportation program goals, partially due to two very distinct executive orders, which we all probably know about. Number one being Executive Order B4818, which directs the state government to include 5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2030 and 250,000 electric vehicle charging stations by 2025. And also the newest one, Executive Order N7920, which sets the goal that 100% of in-state sales of new passenger cars and trucks will be ZEV by 2035. Things are changing quickly, and we want to update you all as soon as possible so you can sell more EVs. Oh, one other thing. California Energy Commission is putting a down payment of $384 million over the next 3 years to add more chargers to California roadways. Electrify America will be investing $800 million over the course of 10 years, and GM recently committed to being all electric by 2035. So are you ready to become an EV charging expert? There's no better time than now. So let's get started on how you can impress your customers with your EV charging knowledge by better knowing your EV customers and how to increase your CSI score. And with that, I'll pass it over to Brad for his little section.
Thanks, Matthew. I'm Brad Farr. I'm one of the OEM dealership specialists here at CSE. I've been around here for about the past 6 months or so, and previously worked with Nissan, specifically on their EV program, as well as with BMW and Mitsubishi in the past. And we're going to talk about knowing your EV customers and being an expert in charging, and ultimately being able to increase your CSI scores because of that. I've been around dealerships for several years and have seen firsthand charging issues that negatively affected CSI scores unwinds because the situation was not handled properly. On the other hand, I've seen many well-seasoned or experienced EV salespeople who covered charging situations flawlessly, gaining many referral customers, and of course, great CSI scores. So to kind of start, let's run through who these EV customers are. And if you were on our previous webinar called Steps to the EV Sale in November, we classified the EV customers into 3 different general types of buyers. So we have first-time EV shoppers. This is kind of who we're gearing this webinar towards, since it would be most commonly who you're discussing charging subjects with. These are people who are buying an EV for the first time. They're set on buying an EV. They tend to do their research and may know a lot, or may even be misinformed, but there's certainly people who ask a lot of questions, including on charging subject matters. They may even do it to test your knowledge out a little bit too. Next, the undecided shopper. They haven't considered an electric vehicle before, or are unsure an EV is a good fit for them. They tend to be the most unknowledgeable about charging because they probably haven't done their research before or done much of it. It's very important to have charging discussions with them to ensure an EV is a good fit for them. And at the very least, it's an educational opportunity for these kind of shoppers who are unlikely to buy today anyway. And we have repeat customers, as in have already owned an EV before and are most likely very familiar with charging subjects, such as how it works, where to charge, associated costs, and things like that. However, if they're looking at a more modern EV, one thing to cover may be the onboard charger or rate of charge, as it may be much improved over their previous EV. So a few examples: they may not have had a DC quick charge connection before, or it had 50 kilowatt charging capabilities. Now they're looking at a vehicle with kilowatt capabilities, or the onboard charger was a 4 kilowatt, now it's a 11 kilowatt. So so covering the and going over the improvements in charging technology and even infrastructure can be a big selling point for them. So let's move into more specifically the charging overview and how it affects customers. And it starts with your knowledge at the dealership. Like anything else, it's better to know about it and not need to talk about it than wish you knew more about it when you need to. And since EV shoppers come in with their own range of knowledge, it can be tricky to gauge where they're at. But you can kind of refer to the customer classifications we just mentioned to get an idea of how that conversation might go in regards to charging. And it can certainly be very helpful with closing the deal as well. You may also want to flex your knowledge a little bit or challenge the customer to think differently when it comes to charging. So for instance, talk to them about possibly recharging every day instead of waiting until almost empty, like they may be used to doing with their gas. Properly answering the question that most buyers ask to take the charge. I know we'll touch on these things later in the webinar today, but it's important to be able to cover with your customers when the appropriate situation comes up. Now, since your customers may not be very familiar with charging in general, let's start with some of the basics to be knowledgeable about, and you can incorporate into your steps of the sale. And later on in the presentation, we'll get into more detail on these things. But at a minimal, be able to explain different types of charging, talk about charging accessibility, be able to make recommendations based on their individual situation. So do they only drive 10 miles a day? Maybe a level 1 cord is totally sufficient for them. Is it 100 miles a day? Maybe you recommend a level 2 install at their home. If they can't do that, maybe talk to them about public quick charging options. Also, review time of use rates with their electric utility and other charging related incentives. That would be in addition to the normal vehicle incentives like the tax credit or CVRP. And be able to highlight various apps and tools to help with the charging or help with charging after they leave the dealership. And by the way, there's a lot of terms be vaguely familiar with, but they have specific meanings, such as, I mentioned EVSE, that's electric vehicle supply equipment. You'll hear a level 1, sometimes called a trickle charge or just a 110 volt outlet. Level 2, sometimes called a standard charge or 220 volts. Level 3, aka DC quick charging, DC. These terms may sometimes be thrown around. So hopefully we cover all these for you to give you a better understanding if and when they come up. These are all things I would consider to be pretty basic, but it should be understood in case it's brought up by the customer. Now, a good experience creates loyalty. You all know that. And benefits of thoroughly covering your customers' charging questions, issues, and concerns, increasing EV sales, lowering the risk of unwinds or rollbacks due to customer dissatisfaction, repeat word-of-mouth customers, referrals, and higher customer rating with CSI scores. So thoroughly covering appropriate charging-related matters to avoid the headache later. It's all to improve their overall satisfaction. And that about wraps up my section. So here's another poll for you real quick. What is the aspect of to discuss with EV customers? A, different levels of charging, B, charging related incentives, or C, covering costs associated with charging? Take a few to fill that out, please. And we'll have a question and answer session at the end if there's anything specific you didn't hear that you want us to cover. All right, so it looks like most commonly covering the costs associated with charging, as well as the other subjects as well. So we'll make sure we hit on all these today. And again, if there's something that's not covered enough, or if you have specific questions, we do have the question and answer at the end. And next up, we have my colleague, Joe Ficalora. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Ficalora, the EV dealership OEM specialist here at CSE. Just a quick background on myself. I've worked for Ford, Hyundai, Mazda, Nissan. When I was with Nissan, it was when they first introduced the Leaf to market back in 2011. I've had just about every position inside the dealership. So I'm not here to teach you how to sell EVs and cars. You guys already know how to do that. I'm here to help make the process of selling EVs a little bit easier for you. So let's jump into the steps of the sale, and we'll start with the meet and greet. So when you first greet a customer, try to identify what type of buyer they are. Like Brad spoke about earlier, are they a first-time buyer, repeat buyer, or undecided buyer? I'm going to focus on the first-time buyer because they usually have the most questions and possibly the least amount of knowledge regarding charging. And this is where you can use your knowledge to clear up any misunderstandings that they have and show yourself as an EV charging expert. Range anxiety is the top barrier to EV adoption. So talk about that big elephant straight away. You can ease their concerns and clear up any misunderstandings that they may have. That's going to change the customer's perspective immediately and ease any concerns that they may have, making the sales process a lot easier. You want to know your charging and infrastructure inside and out. You want to be completely comfortable and confident talking about charging and charging locations as you would be talking about gas and gas stations. Otherwise, the customers, they're going to see you're hesitant. They're not, they won't feel comfortable. Remember, you guys are the EV charging experts. Give off that confidence and impress your customer. It's going to make the sale that much easier. We'll move on along to the next step, the discovery. During this discovery, assess your customer's daily driving range needs. Find out how many miles they drive, how often they drive beyond the range of the EV that they're looking at. If your customer drives up to 60 to 80 miles per day, a full battery electric is a perfect choice for them. If they drive more than the 60 or 80 miles, a plug-in hybrid might be better suited for their needs, but keep in mind that charging infrastructure is plentiful these days, and taking a quick short charge at a level 3 charger just to top off during their commute or drive, that might be a solution for those customers set on buying an EV and don't mind, stopping along the way to charge. Explain to the customer EVs aren't like gas-powered vehicles that get fueled up once or twice a week. EVs get plugged in at any and every opportunity for as short a time as possible or as long a time as possible. You really need to change their perspective on how to refuel their cars. EVs are not like gas-powered vehicles. So next step, we'll talk about the walkaround. Once you have an idea of what vehicle is suitable for your customer, land them on that specific vehicle, start to butterfly the car, and really dig into their charging needs. Ask where they'll be charging. Will they be installing a charger at home? Do they have workplace charging? Are there any public chargers close to their home? Again, knowing your charging and infrastructure so you can speak confidently and answer any questions and overcome any obstacles they may have, and crush any doubts that they have that an EV may not be for them. So know your charging, know your infrastructure. Moving along to the next step, closing the sale. After you get back from the test drive and you get your customer inside for the write-up, you all know this is where the real fun begins. When you're trying to close the deal, don't forget to mention how gas savings are going to offset their monthly payment. On average, an EV costs half as much to refuel as compared to a gas-powered vehicle. So that equates to about $20 to $30 a month of savings over the course of a 36-month lease. Also, don't forget to mention the rebate from the CVRP, which is going to offset their payment another $55 to $60 a month over the course of a 36-month lease as well. So this total savings between gas and addition to the CVRP rebate is going to be about $100. So remind them that they're going to be saving money with gas, saving money from not purchasing gas at gas stations, and the extra money from the CVRP rebate. Now moving along to the next step, the service walk. After you close the deal, the customer's waiting to get into finance. You can take your customer to service. introduce them to the service advisors. Although the service needs are less on an EV than a gas-powered vehicle, take them to the parts department. Let them know that they can purchase a home charger from the dealership. If you're really savvy, you can roll it into the financing of the vehicle during the closing step. But I can't stress enough the importance of knowing your charging and infrastructure. Your knowledge here will make or break the sale of an EV. The more confident you are in speaking about charging, the more you're going to impress your customer and build their trust in you, the dealership, and the vehicle that they're going to purchase. Now I'm going to pass the baton along to my colleague, CJ Noble.
Thanks so much, Joe. Like Joe said, my name is CJ Noble. I am a dealership outreach coordinator for the East Bay, South Bay, and Peninsula regions, and I'm going to be talking about the charging basics, as well as how to turn common customer concerns into an EV sale. So as we've talked about, there is a lot of information that we've gone over, and it's so easy to get lost in the weeds while talking about the details of charging, especially when it comes to talking about the different types of chargers. While you can always just let customers do their own research, by providing a concise rundown of the different types of chargers, you can set realistic expectations, avoid rollbacks resulting from unnecessary charging anxiety, and even make a potential sale on the level 2 charger. Helping customers grasp the basics of EV charging is the first step in addressing EV concerns and enhancing the customer's experience. Level 1 charging here on the left side is going to be the slowest form of charging and is often included with the car at the time of purchase. This method of charging requires just a traditional home outlet and takes anywhere from 8 to 24 hours depending on the battery size. These chargers are going to be great for people driving plug-in hybrids, making regular short commutes, or for individuals that have access to chargers at their workplace. Level 2 charging is going to be marginally quicker and may require utility upgrades, but can fully charge an EV in about 8 hours. Level 2 chargers are great for most households, as even people who do slightly longer commutes will have an opportunity to regain most of their charge overnight. Level 3 charging is going to be direct current fast charging and can fully charge an EV to about 80% in as little as 30 minutes. This tends to be a bit more of an expensive option and is typically found along highway corridors and in shopping centers. So once a customer has a general understanding of the different types of chargers they have available, they may have a few questions about how they're expected to make that transition. They could ask things like, but I fill up my car with gas twice a week. Why should I charge my car every single day? And you know what? That's a fair question because this will feel like a big change. But that transition is much easier than you'd expect. These transitions are bound to happen as technology advances, the same way we all had to transition from charging those old track phones once a month to charging your smartphone every night. I don't know about you all, but I'm pretty sure that my old Nokia cell phone is still kicking around in a drawer somewhere with a little bit of juice left in it, but I don't really consider it an option after transitioning to a smartphone. Having to adjust my charging habits is an insignificant price to pay for being able to play 20 different versions of Angry Birds on my new phone. Transitioning to charging an EV is going to be no different. The nice thing about EVs is they can be plugged in and charging whenever they're not being driven. And when you're behind the wheel of a high-tech EV, between the sleek new feel and the torque that just won't quit, you won't be thinking twice about gas stations. On top of that, regenerative braking charges the battery while driving. Some of those EVs that have regenerative braking capabilities can convert the energy lost when slowing the vehicle into a charge that can be fed back into the battery, further extending the vehicle's range. Customers might also ask questions like, it takes me 10 minutes to gas up. Why would I wait 30 minutes, 2 hours, or even overnight to charge? Well, the great thing about charging is that it can be deployed in far more places than gas stations. In fact, people tend to charge their cars while they're at home, while they're at work, or even when they're out and about. EV chargers are becoming increasingly more accessible, and having the equipment at your home or work means that you can cut out those weekly trips to fuel your car altogether. Refueling with gasoline might feel quicker, but incorporating charging an EV into your weekly routine is more convenient and requires no thinking or planning whatsoever. When all you have to do to fuel your car is remember to plug in the charger when you get home from work, making the switch is literally a no-brainer. But what about road trips? I can't possibly travel more than 2 hours without running out of charge. Well, EVs have come a long way and can last anywhere from 100 to 300 miles now on a single charge. Access to charging in California is abundant nowadays, even on rural roads and interstate highways. Here in California, road trips are in our blood. Whether you're heading out to the East Sierras for a weekend away or driving up the one on a month-long retreat, driving an EV doesn't have to change that experience. Chargers that you find along the highway will most likely be level 2 and often level 3 chargers. What that means is when you and your family are on a road trip and your battery drops down to 25%, you pull off to grab lunch and stretch your legs, and all you have to do is plug into the nearest DC fast charger, and depending on your battery size, you could be back to full charge in as little as 45 minutes. With charging being that simple to incorporate into your road trip plans, it's hard to imagine why anyone would be worried about switching to an EV. So many of these misconceptions about charging and EV range come from outdated information. People often forget that even though electric vehicles have only recently seen a surge in mainstream popularity, they've been on the market for over 100 years, which means people have already made up their minds about what EVs are all about. In the last few years alone, EV technology has come leaps and bounds from that point. And ensuring that your customer is well informed about the pace of EV technology growth will help them recognize that not only are EVs here to stay, but they're also more accessible than ever. Lots of people remember the Nissan Leaf as one of the first models to bring electric into the public eye. But since that original boom, when people first started trying to wrap their heads around the ideas of EVs, the Leaf has nearly tripled its range, from 84 miles in 2014 to 226 miles in 2021. Some customers will also say, gas stations are everywhere. Now I have to use my phone to know where to charge my EV. But imagine that you're visiting a family friend in an unfamiliar place, and you realize that your car is running out of gas. Would you just start blindly driving around looking for a gas station, hoping you'll spot something before you run dry? Or would you pull out your phone to see where the nearest station to you is? No matter what kind of fuel you need, your phone is a valuable tool for finding a convenient place to refuel. Plus, most vehicles nowadays have onboard navigation systems and can help drivers navigate to a nearby charger. If you drive a typical ICE vehicle, it's no surprise that you can identify half a dozen gas stations near you. But have you ever actually stopped to check how many EV chargers you've got around you too? There are over 23,000 charging outlets available to the public in California, and just over 10,000 public gas stations. In the next 5 to 10 years, public and commercial charging stations will become widely accessible to all EV drivers everywhere. When you make the switch, it'll feel as if dozens of EV chargers in your area are coming into focus. There are tons of opportunities to charge on the go, but you didn't see them before just because you weren't looking for them. Now, learning the location of your local charging station will be quick and easy using the available charging station phone apps. So we saw earlier from Brad's poll that one of the biggest concerns from customers is about the cost of charging. So teaching customers how to maximize their savings when going electric is a very important way to increase your customer satisfaction scores and solidify your dealership's leadership in the realm of EVs. It's important to know that every single utility provider will have a different structure in place for billing EV customers. Often, utilities are even running programs that will offer rebates and savings for customers that purchase a level 2 charger. With that in mind, it's important for customers to research savings about off-peak times and check with their local utility company to see if they offer a discount during off-peak hours or rebates and incentives for the purchase of a charger. In addition, many EVs today and some chargers come with timing mechanisms to only accept a charge at certain times, further increasing those savings. Here's a great example of how the time of use rates are often broken down for utilities. Like I mentioned, this is not a typical tiered system. A customer is going to be billed based on the time of day that they're demanding the energy. You'll see along the bottom of this chart here the different times of day, and along the vertical axis we have the cost of the energy that's being demanded. On the far left there and on the far right, you can see that the overnight and morning or off-peak electricity prices are much lower, so charging is cheap. But during the afternoon, mid-peak, and evening on-peak hours when people are awake and are turning on appliances, prices are much more expensive because a higher number of households are demanding the energy. Sharing these best practices about utilities and savings on how to keep your charging prices low will go a long way in showing your customers that you and your dealership are the EV charging experts. Next up, I'm going to pass it back to Matteo here to review the easy-to-use charging phone apps and provide some final thoughts as well.
Great, CJ. Thank you. Asking your customer if they have ever seen an EV charging station around town is a good intro into the public charging conversation because most often they are familiar with what charging looks like, but hesitant with how to access charging. As CJ mentioned earlier, EV owners must rethink how they refuel. Your new EV customer can no longer pull off the highway and fuel up anywhere without knowing where to go beforehand. So indeed, they will need to plan and prepare a bit more. Luckily, there are a variety of public charging options, promotions, and apps to help assist your customer find the right charge for the right price. Access to public charging stations can be free, pay as you go, or subscription-based. So let your customer know that there are options and for sure highlight any OEM charging incentives as well. So what app do we suggest? That's pretty easy. CVRP recommends steering your customers to Plugshare as their go-to app because it's pretty easy to use, comprehensive, and accessible on the CVRP website. Plugshare shows the location of charging locations and stations and provides important details like what kind of plugs the stations support. So many of your new EV customers will believe that all charging stations charge any and all EVs. That's not necessarily the case, although there is some standardization. For example, EVs such as the Nissan Leaf and Chevy Bolt both use the same plug for 1 and 2 charging, but they support different standards for level 3 fast charging. Meanwhile, a Tesla has their own standards as well. So get them to download the Plugshare app and inform them they can filter their preference and quickly be on their way to charge up. Knowing your EV model charging plugs and correctly steering your customers to the right charging options from their app will have your customer driving off that lot confident, safe, knowledgeable, and happy. And how? Because you were their EV expert. Before we end this webinar, we have some final thoughts and the big reveal of our lead generation tool. Dealerships have an opportunity to shift their store's function by offering more charging services to the public, which communicates to car shoppers that EVs are for sale. This may help attract more EV shoppers to your dealership now and into the future. If your dealership is interested in adding a charging station on the lot, check out Cali VIP, which incentivizes the purchase of EV public charging stations. Also, it's important to remember that your EV expertise is a marketing strategy. And by including what you learned today and elsewhere into the conversation with your EV customer, your dealership can really increase the CSI score by remembering how to explain the different types of charging, talk about charging accessibility, be able to recommend based on their individual situations, reviewing time of use rate and other related incentives, and then highlighting various apps and tools to help with charging. One last thing. CVRP has developed a lead generation tool that helps bring more EV customers to your dealership. With thousands of viewers daily on the cleanvehiclerebate.org website, there will be a significant portion of consumers using the California Dealer Network to start their buying experience with you. So if you're interested, please follow up at dealership@energycenter.org. Contact your local, your regional dealership outreach coordinator, email us, and basically all eyes will be on your dealership. So the California Dealer Network is a really great opportunity to bring more customers to your dealership. And with that, I would like to end with some questions and answers. So we have questions in the question box. We'll take another 10, 15 minutes to answer those as well. All right, well, we don't have any questions. But we hope that this opportunity to learn more about how to become an EV charging expert will really help with your CSI score. We at CVRP want to support you dealerships as much as we can. So thank you again for everyone participating and attending, and have a great day. We will also be sending the slides out via email, and the video will be online next week. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.